All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Torah Study, Tuesday night Torah Study. Yay! Now, I might not be the sharpest tack in the box, but I'm noticing a trend. When we have decided to do something with fun and food in addition to Torah Study, more of you show up. You couldn't sneak that one by me. I figured that one out. So I got to see that one. Okay. All right, anyway, welcome to the Torah Study, sponsored by MTOI and Shalom. So that's our bigger organization, our local congregation here. On the live stream, we have Manny and Mr. Rob Wyatt. And so please be respectful of their authority in the live stream room, in the chat room, please. All right. Okay, how many we got on there already? Anybody? How many? 103 already. We're just getting started. Wonderful. Okay. So just a quick reminder of how this is going to work. So we're going to have a little bit of prayer time. Let's just see if there's any prayer needs within the group. After the prayer time, I'll make some announcements. Then we'll go ahead and get the readings done. We'll read this week's Torah portion, which is Vayigash. Okay, and then we're going to go from the readings into maybe another repeat of the announcements so we can make sure that anybody... Oh, and Kurt's on too. So you guys got a lot of people there watching what you're doing there, so please behave. They'll help guide you to have a good, successful Torah study. All right? And after we do the readings and have a couple more announcements, then we'll go ahead and discuss the portion. So let's go ahead and start off with prayer time. So if you've got a prayer need or a praise report here locally, raise your hand. Steve will come around with the mic, and online, the online guys will take care of that. Okay? All right. We'll begin with Kathy.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Shalom.
I'm just very grateful that Chick-fil-A has called me back, and I have a phone interview for a job on January 8th.
Yay! All right, this is a good day for getting some job respondings. And we had somebody else get some jobs today, too. So we had a couple of people get jobs. It's great. All right, who's next? Okay, Selena.
I think my mom may have the flu. She's not usually sick, so prayers for her.
Sure, absolutely. All right, who's next? Okay, Rabbi Tom.
Thank you. I just think that we should all be thankful that to date, Abba has kept us safe and secure here during our worship, because it hasn't always been that way in different places of the country or the world. So we ought to be thankful for that and be cognizant of it.
Amen. Amen. So I'll go ahead and add something there. Okay, so part of our prayer time, obviously there's been a lot of anti-Semitic acts lately, especially in New York, and as well as some churches that have been attacked as well. And so, excuse me, there are those out there that wish to do people harm, and there's also those out there that wish to point the finger at the wrong people as to who's doing the harm. Okay? At this point, it doesn't look like the people doing harm are part of any organized thing. They're just some people that, as like with this last one in New York, the family members were saying that the person was off their medication or, was having. So a lot of this has to do with, those that are having, psychological, emotional issues, losing control over themselves and that kind of thing. But there are, groups of people out there that want to use it to their advantage to point the finger at the other groups of people. And so let's not get caught up in that, because many have been quite embarrassed to, find out that they were wrong. And, of course, they never apologized for being wrong, but, there was an attack on the Jewish deli restaurant, and quickly some of the left of our politicians were quickly to say it was white supremacist, only to find out it wasn't someone who was white, it was a person of color. Okay? And so, let's not point the finger, okay? People of every different color are capable of doing these things, So let's not try to now, because a couple of them might have been done by someone who had darker skin, start thinking that they're the problem. If it's lighter skin, thinking they're the problem. People are the problem. Unstable people with emotional problems who don't have their hope in Yahweh, who are not grounded in Torah, who don't understand that murder is against the commandments and it's not the right way to treat it. This is the problem, is people. Okay? People are the problem. Okay, so but also as Rabbi Tom is pointing out, we are a place of meeting, a place of worship, and praise Yah, we've been safe up to this point, and may we stay safe and continue to be safe. And of course, we're also thankful that in the case of that last church episode, that the laws in Texas had changed to allow for people to be in their place of worship, and be carrying. And it was one of their volunteer people, as we have in our congregation. So anybody out there, let you be warned. You probably will have just as much success as the last guy and end up in the same state, which is dead. But we are glad that that law had changed so that somebody would be able to do that. And that helps to show the people out there that de-arming or disarming the people is not what keeps them safe. Because those who are doing evil will always be able to find the guns and the weapons. But see, when you have somebody show up someplace where, if somebody in a school was like that gentleman in the church, the school shootings would end quickly. Because these places no longer look like soft targets. Okay? And so, and thankfully also that man was obviously very well prepared and very well trained. Okay? Because even though the whole thing, they say, took about 6 seconds, in that 6 seconds he was able to draw his weapon, wait for the people to get out of the way of his line of fire, and still shoot accurately. Okay? And so, we forget sometimes in times of peace that we have historically been, those who are of the people of Yah, the people of Elohim, have been targets for all kinds of atrocities and violence. So let's pray that would, that we continue to be protected from that and have that be something that we can avoid. Okay, who's next? And by the way, maybe we should also put as part of the announcements, those of you that would like to be a part of a meeting about how we can, actually as a whole congregation, we should have a conversation about how we should handle if something does happen. You should know as a congregant not to just start running necessarily, but maybe just hit the floor and allow those that can handle it to have an easy line of sight and that kind of thing. Because it's kind of like having a fire drill. We should have a, under fire drill. That's not to be funny, but I mean, because it could happen. Friend of mine in another state is a rabbi there, and, he keeps a Glock right there on his podium. Because there have been attacks where he was in his neighborhood, and so, he's got one right there at the lectern. Okay? I'll keep you guys guessing as to whether I have one. All right, Rick.
Yeah, prayer request for Kevin. He's in the hospital doing pretty well, but he's come down with a sinus infection, which with everything else he's got going on isn't good. So if we could keep that in prayer. Praise report. I had a pulmonary function test yesterday and was told by the technician, it's not official because I haven't heard it from the doctor yet, but my numbers are all good and I do no longer have COPD.
Oh, that's great.
So that's cool.
Great.
And another praise, I was at Sam's Club earlier today, and walking in the door, this guy noticed my zits, and I forget exactly what he said, but he said, "Hello, brother," or something. He said, "I haven't seen those in 2 years since he moved from Denver." And so he's going to be checking us out here.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Shortly. Yeah.
All right, who's next? Okay, live stream.
From Chris and Andy Ollie Dennis, prayer request. Andy has a throat virus. Please pray for it to go away. A few of the ladies on polo have been suffering bad headaches. Please pray for them. From Shira, please pray for my overactive adrenals to calm down. Carolyn Giles, pray for a friend who will have to have another biopsy in her lungs and healing for her cold. Carrie Silveri, prayer request. My oldest son's grandmother is in hospice Any prayers would be greatly appreciated. Santi Lee, pray for providence and duty arrangements of personal support worker for my son. Philip Mason, prayer, I just found out today that I have a small hernia in my abdomen. Prayers as I wait further treatment options. Praise for an anointed appointed teacher and a wonderful family and community. Laura Powell, my mother is in the hospital with a bad flu. She also has many health issues and is 76 years old. Alyssa Holmes, please pray for my mother. She is doing worse. I had to leave for North Carolina Sunday due to an appointment with her in horrible condition. Arthur and Linda, continue prayer for Linda, has been diagnosed with pancreatitis and severe infection through her whole digestive system. Prayers for speedy recovery. Nita Coleman, prayers for my friend with Parkinson's who's in a hospice and her family, please. From Shan D, prayer for health following a tick bite. Also prayer for Abba to draw my husband closer to him and open his eyes and ears. Praise for having the easiest Christmas season yet. And that's many unspoken, and that's all we have for right now.
Amen. Amen. Okay, and by the way, as we get through these seasons, and it's challenging because of family members, the more years you have of doing it and the more consistent, and as long as you maintain your integrity and consistency with it, the family will eventually figure out that you're not going to change. It takes time sometimes, and it goes into some pretty rough areas, especially at the beginning, but just, because at the beginning they're thinking it may just go away and it may change, so they may be a little bit nicer to you. Then at some point they realize it probably isn't going to change, and they get much harsher and more trying to push the issue. And then when they really realize no matter what they do, it's not going to change, they tend to calm down or shun you and ignore you or some other thing. But at least it calms down one way or the other, okay? But you have to maintain your peace and shalom and your integrity throughout, okay? That's the important thing. Because, as predictable as these things are, they happen every year. Just you got to know they're coming and be ready for them. But, do not let them, they're going to see how far they can push to get you to, it's like the little kid that's going to nag mom until mom finally says yes. Don't let them do that to you. I mean, when I say don't let them, I mean, they're going to do what they do. Don't let them get that result. Don't you give in, okay? And then it will get easier. So I'm hoping that was the case with the person who said that their season was easier, is that eventually over time, people will finally figure it out that no matter what they do, you're committed to Yah, okay? All right. Anybody else? No? Okay. So we do want to pray for all those that have asked for prayer since the last time we had prayer, as well as continued prayer for that. Again, for those who are not watching Shabbat service and you're here for the Torah study, it's a mechanical thing. It has to do with a drip that I got from my allergies. I'm not contagious. I'm not sick. I went to the doctor. The doctor said there wasn't anything wrong with me except that something was triggering the cough. So it's mostly better. At night it gets worse, and obviously it's getting into nighttime now. So we'll hopefully get through the study without too much problems. All right, we do want to continue to pray for all those that are suffering losses from some of the recent attacks and the things that are going on. Pray for those in different parts of the world that are having adverse conditions, whether they are political or, weather-related or whatever it is. It's very tough when we deal with things like the fires going on right now in Australia. But we have to remember, if those of us that are old enough, we already know, these things are cyclical. Okay, but there's a lot of us in the room that are younger that don't realize that they're cyclical. They think it's global warming is causing it or some other thing is causing it. And you can look up, and I did just to see it, like in the 1800s, there were fires that destroyed literally millions of acres more than what we're talking about today, okay? There have been some big fires. But believe it or not, that's part of a healthy forest. It's actually good for the forest to have the fire. The problem is for us, we put houses near them. It's just like I could never understand the rich people that put their houses right by the Pacific Coast Highway when the mudslides happen every year. And then their house ends up across the highway. And then they act all upset and surprised, even though happens almost every year. Or at least so many times within a 10-year period. It's like, oh, this is a predictable thing. Okay? Places end up in droughts, places end up with floods, places end up with all kinds of adversity. Sometimes it's, we may go through a severe winter here, and people say, look, see, it's cold. But then someplace else on the other side of the world, it's a severe heat, or vice versa. The climate changes daily. It changes so much that if I look at my phone app that tells me the weather for next week, it's like 2 days from now, and then I look at it again 5 hours from now, it will change. So I don't know why climate change is a political issue or some sort of world-changing issue. The climate changes all the time. And it's not all that predictable. Okay? It's amazing that they get it right as much as they do. Okay? But we do want to pray for people that are dealing with things like a volcano could blow up, a hurricane, typhoon, fires, whatever, because, there are people that do suffer loss from these things. So I don't want to minimize that. I just want us to recognize and remember that we have to be careful that we're not being drawn into a fear mindset or a fearful thought process. We were not given the, spirit of fear, but that of a sound mind, okay? And we talked about this a while back. I think it was on Rosh Kodesh, the idea of having a weak mind versus having no heart. But that weak mind, it takes a strength of mind to trust and have faith and belief combined with your heart in what Yahweh says. Amen? Amen. So let's pray. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Father, we come before you on this, our night that we do our Torah study for the weekly Torah portion. And Father, we want to thank you for who you are and for all the things that you do. We want to ask that you would be with us tonight, that you would guide and lead all things, so all things would be to your glory and honor, that you would hear and answer all prayers as we know you do, and help us to accept your answer, whether your answer is the one we desire, the way we see it, or help us to accept that your answer is the right answer, even if we can't see that answer at all. And that happens often enough. So, Father, we need that encouragement from you. We appreciate, and you've heard what we have in our hearts towards you. We thank you for the miracles, small and great, every day that you do, the things that continuously remind us about our relationship with you and that you're there and that you care. So, Father, we want to thank you and ask you to be with us today as we study your word, guiding us in that study, opening up our hearts and minds to understand what you have for us today so that we can glean whatever we need to glean from it so that we can apply it in our lives as we transform daily into the image of Yeshua. So, Father, we come to you now in that authority, the authority of Yeshua our Messiah, and together we say, Amen, Amen. All right, Amen. Okay, so quick announcements. Let's see. So, for those of you that are online, we do this every Tuesday, so just a reminder. So every Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We also have, along with this, a youth program called Parsha Pearls. Okay, so we call our ministry MTOI. The youth program is MTOI, the Young Messianic Torah Observant Israelites. And the Parsha Pearls program is the weekly Torah portions. We have them on a website, ymtoi.org. It's all free. It's a great curriculum for the children, mostly from ages, say, 5 to 17 or 18. But really anybody could benefit from going through the program. And it's got in there a brief overview of a part of the portion, so the children will learn some aspect of the portion. There'll be some ways that we will quiz them a little bit, like some fill in the blanks or whatever, to see if they actually were paying attention. There'll be some word searches and crossword puzzles and mazes and coloring pages and crafts and snacks. And I mean, it is just, actually, I don't know why we're doing this. We should be doing that. It sounds a lot more fun. My wife is like, yeah, that's an idea right there. Okay. And of course she would say that because she put that program together, and it is fabulous. Okay, it's a fabulous program with the help of many, including Stephanie Meyer and others. So we do want to appreciate all the help that people put into the program. And really, you should be prayerful and thankful to Yah, because we're putting this tremendous program together and we provide it to you for free. Okay? I mean, I don't know what most ministries that you would have been familiar with would charge for, a 30 to 60 page, it's 2 different groups of kids, different ages, so 30 pages each or so, program every week available with all that kind of material, all proprietarily original from us. Okay, it also has Hebrew words and flashcards, and I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of stuff in there. I don't know what they would charge. They would probably put it on their website and ask you to only get it as a premium member. Well, you're all premium members of MTOI, which makes it free. Okay? And to become a premium member doesn't cost you anything. You just have to go to the website and take what you need from there, and hopefully it'll be useful. Okay? ymtoi.org. All right. We also stream our services on Shabbat every Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Excuse me. That cough sounds terrible. At 1 o'clock, no, I don't think I need water for it. It's just going to cough. So we do that at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We start really about 1:15, but the stream will start at 1, and you can get in there and see some of the announcements, stream there, and hear some music and stuff like that. January the 19th is our next leadership meetings. March the 10th will be our Purim and Torah study. Okay, so we're going to do that together on March 10th. We'll do a little something for Purim and Torah study. And then, of course, we have Passover 2020. Next year's Passover will be April 8th through 16th. The registration forms are available on our website, mtoi.org. Go to the Passover page, and you can fill out the form right there on the website, or you can download it, print it, and mail it in. Okay? And I think that's going to cover it for the announcements. Excuse me. We have a lot of new stuff planned for this year coming up. And so we'll be announcing those things as they come up. This is going to be a rough night. I can see already. I can't even complete a sentence without a problem. All right. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and get this going on with the reading. So I have, let me see how many I've got. 7 readers. That's all I need tonight is 7. 7 readers for Vayigash. Okay. Yes. Nope. None of that's going to make any difference, unfortunately. She was offering me a lozenge. It's not something that's causing that. So, hey, Steve, put one more chair up there, and then with Rabbi Tom, that's perfect. So we got 6 seats and Rabbi Tom. So that'll be just perfect. Okay. And then we have everybody that we need. There you go. All right. All right, so Vayigash, what does that mean? And came near. Okay, and came near. Okay, I heard somebody yell at a wrong answer. Who might actually be related to me. You're forgiven. Okay. Well, it wasn't you that I was talking about anyway, so. It was your daughter. Okay, so that's okay. The children next to her smacked her and laughed at her, so it was fine. Okay. Vayigash and came near. It's going to be from Bereshit, Genesis 44:18 to 47:27. Okay, 44:18 to 47:27. And, of course, the Rebbitzin was thinking of one of the 15 Parshas that she's working on at the same time for the YMTOI program, so that sometimes it's confusing which one you're doing this week because you're working on 2 or 3 at the same time. I get that. All right. So let's go ahead. We'll start with Rabbi Tom. So what we're going to do is we're going to call up readers one at a time. I will say a blessing over them, and then I will tell them what verses they're going to read. And after they read, then we'll go on to the next reader, same thing. For those of you that are going to be wanting to participate in the discussion portion when we're done, I would highly recommend having a paper, pen, pencil, whatever you need to do. Use your phone to take notes for a comment or something. Just maybe write down a verse you want to ask about or talk about. I mean, that's how I do it. I have my notes here, and as you guys are reading, if something might trigger that I think we need to talk about, I write it down. Of course, I have some from previous years already written down. I usually add some to it each year as we go through it. Okay. So that being said, let me come up here to Rabbi Tom. Let me put this stand over here. Oh, I know what I forgot to announce. So part of the announcements is that after this is over, those of you that wanted to stay, and that's why you're all here, I know, we're planning to have some snacks, desserts, games, whatever, dancing, who knows, whatever we're going to do, and just hang out for a little while. Because being that it is New Year's Eve, not that I don't want to get in arguments with all you people on live stream, oh, he called it New Year's, it's not really the New Year. Okay, so when you go to work tomorrow, pretend it's not 2020. Okay? You can call it whatever year you want to call it. All right. But for everybody else in this country and the planet, it will be 2020 tomorrow. And so we're not going to be like watching the ball drop and turning it into a big, that kind of, but most of us are off tomorrow. Okay? And so we know people can stay up a little later and hang out. So we're going to take the advantage of the fact that we can have what we call a night of chavarim and mishpacha. Okay, mishpacha is family, chavarim is friends. Okay? So it's going to be a nice little time together. All right, so we'll do that after the study is over. Okay, let's go ahead and start here with Rabbi Tom. All right. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us from verse 18 to the end of the chapter.
And Yehuda came near to him and said, O my master, please let your servant speak a word in my master's hearing. And do not let your displeasure burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh. My master asked his servant, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my master, We have a father, an old man, and a young child of his old age, and his brother is dead. And he alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him. And you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, and let me set my eyes on him. And we said to my master, The boy is not able to leave his father, for if he leaves his father shall die. But you said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you do not see my face again. And it came to be, when we went up to your servant, my father, that we told him the words of my master. And our father said, Go back and buy us a little food. But we said, We're not able to go down. If our youngest brother is not with us, then we shall go down. For we are not able to see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me, and I said, Truly he is torn to pieces, and I have not seen him since. And if you take this one from me too, and harm comes to him, you shall bring down my gray hair with evil to Sheol. And now, if I come to your servant, my father, the boy is not with us, since his own life is bound up in his life, then it shall be, when he sees that the boy is not with us, that he shall die. So your servant shall bring down the gray hair of your servant our father with evil to Sheol. For your servant went guarantee for the boy to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then I shall be a sinner before my father forever. And now, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a slave to my master, and let the boy go up with his brothers. For how do I go up to my father if the boy is not with me, lest I see the evil that would come upon my father?
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Rabbi Tom. Okay, next up we have Sarah Beth, who rumor has it might have a birthday tomorrow. Yeah, you can clap. See, being like a father, I can embarrass her. Okay, it's part of my job. See, now you really do have a father in me. See, I get to embarrass you. All right. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Sarah Beth, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now to chapter 45 and read verses 1 through 15.
And Joseph was unable to restrain himself before all those who stood by him. And he called out, Have everyone go out from me. So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, and the Mitzrites and the house of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were unable to answer him, for they trembled before him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." And when they came near, he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Mitzrayim. And now, do not be grieved nor displeased with yourselves, because you sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. For 2 years now the scarcity of food has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there is neither plowing nor harvest. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to give life to you by a great escape. So then, you did not send me here, but Elohim. And he has set me for a father to Pharaoh, and master of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Mitzrayim. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, 'Thus says your son Yosef, Elohim has made me master of all Mitzrayim. Come down to me, do not delay, and you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and be near to me, you and your children, and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. And I shall provide for you there, lest you and your household, and all that you have come to poverty, because 5 years of scarcity of food are still to come. And look, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. And you shall inform my father of all my esteem in Mitzrayim, and of all that you have seen. And you shall hurry and bring my father down here.' And he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all his brothers, and wept over them. And after that his brothers spoke with him.
Amen. Amen. Very emotional moment there with Joseph and his brothers. Okay, Amy. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Amy, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, take us now from verse 16 to the end of the chapter.
And the report of it was heard by the house of Pharaoh, saying, "The brothers of Joseph have come." And it was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go, enter the land of Canaan, and take your father and your household and come to me, and I give you the best of the land of Mitzrayim, and you eat the fat of the land. And you have been commanded, do this, take wagons out of the land of Mitzrayim for your little ones and your wives, and you shall bring your father and come. And do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Mitzrayim is yours." And the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the mouth of Pharaoh, and he gave them food for the journey. He gave to all of them, to each man, changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And he sent to his father this, 10 donkeys loaded with the best of Mitzrayim, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and food for his father for the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and they left. And he said to them, "Do not quarrel along the way." And they went up out of Mitzrayim and came to the land of Canaan to Jacob their father. And they told him, saying, "Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Mitzrayim." And Jacob's heart ceased, for he did not believe them. But when they spoke to him all the words which Joseph had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to transport him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said, "Enough, my son Joseph is still alive. Let me go and see him before I die."
Amen. Amen. Okay, thank you, Amy. Okay, next up, Shannon. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Shannon, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Shannon's going to take us now to chapter 46 and read verses 1 through 18.
And Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba. and slaughtered slaughterings to the Elohim of his father Yitzhak. And Elohim spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Yaakov, Yaakov. And he said, Here I am. And he said, I am the Elohim of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Mitzrayim, for I shall make you there into a great nation. I myself am going down with you to Mitzrayim, and I myself shall certainly bring you up again, and let Yosef put his hand on your eyes. And Yaakov rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel brought their father Yaakov and their little ones and their wives in the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to transport him. And they took their livestock and their property which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and came into Mitzrayim, Yaakov and all his seed with him. His sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his seed he brought with him to Mitzrayim. And these were the names of the children of Israel, Yaakov and his sons who came into Mitzrayim. Reuben was Yaakov's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanok and Palu, and Hezron and Carmi, and the sons of Shimon, Yemuel and Yamin, and Yahad and Yakin, and Soar and Shaul, son of a Canaanite woman, and the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, and the sons of Yehuda, and Onan, and Shelah, and Peretz, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan, and the sons of Peretz were Hezron and Hamul, and the sons of Yishakar, Tola, and Puah, and Yob, and Shimron, and the sons of Zebulun, Seret, and Elon, and Yalel. These were the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Yaakov in Padan Aram, with his daughter Dinah. All the beings, his sons and his daughters, were 33. And the sons of Gad, Siphion, and Haggai, Shuni, and Esbon, Eri, and Orodi, and Areli. And the sons of Asher, Yimnah, and Yisha, and Yishui, and Beriah, and Sarah, and Sarah their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malkiel. These were the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she bore to Yaakov 16 beans.
Amen. All right, you got some names to read here. I think you can do it. All right. Serenity. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Serenity, who's come up to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now from verse 19 to the end of the chapter.
The sons of Rahel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin, and Joseph in the land of Mitzrayim, were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela and Becher, and Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, and Hupim, and Ard. These were the sons of Rahel, who were born to Jacob, 14 beings in all. And the son of Dan, Hushim, and the daughters of Naphtali, Yatsael, and Guni, and Yetzer, and Shilem. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rahel, his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 beings in all. All the beings who went with Jacob to Mitzrayim, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 beings in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Mitzrayim, were 2 beings. All the beings of the house of Jacob, who went to Mitzrayim, were 70. And he sent Yehuda before him to Joseph, to point out before him the way to Goshen. And they came to the land of Goshen, and Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. And he appeared to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a long time. And Israel said to Joseph, Now let me die, since I have seen your face, that you are still alive. And Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I am going up to inform Pharaoh and say to him, My brothers and those of my father's house who are in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men are shepherds, that they have been men of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And it shall be, when Pharaoh calls you and says, What is your occupation? That you shall say, Your servants have been men of livestock from our youth even till now, both we and also our fathers, so that you dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Mitzrites.
Amen. Awesome job. Fantastic. Thank you, Serenity. Okay. Gabe. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Gabe who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, you're going to take us now to chapter 47 and read verses 1 through 13.
1 through 13. Okay. Then Joseph went and spoke to Pharaoh and said, My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds, and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan, and see, they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, What is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, We have come to dwell in the land, because there is no pasture for your servants' flocks. For the scarcity of food is served in the land of Canaan. And now please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spoke to Yoshe, saying, Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Mitzrayim is before you. Settle your father and brothers in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen, and if you know of capable men among them, then make them chief herds, men over my livestock. And Joseph brought in his father Yaakov and set him before Pharaoh, and Yaakov blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yaakov, How old are you? And Yaakov said to Pharaoh, The days of the years of my sojournings are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not reached the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their sojourns. And Yaakov blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. So Joseph settled his father and his land of Mitzrayim in the best of the land, in the land of Rameses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Yosef provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with bread for the mouth of the little ones. Now there was no bread in all the land, because the scarcity of food was very severe, and the land of Mitzrayim and all the land of Canaan became exhausted in the scarcity of food.
All right, thank you, Gabe. All right, last up we have Mr. Rick. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rick, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rick, take us from verse 14 to 27.
And Joseph gathered up all the silver that was found in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they had bought. And Joseph brought the silver into Pharaoh's house. And when the silver was all spent in the land of Mitzrayim and in the land of Canaan, all the Mitzrites came to Joseph and said, Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the silver is gone. And Joseph said, Give your livestock, and I give you bread for your livestock, if the silver is gone. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, and for the flocks they owned, and for the herds they owned, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, We do not hide from my master that our silver is all spent, and my master also has the livestock we owned. There has not been left any before my master, but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and let us and our land be servants of Pharaoh. And give us seed, and let us live and not die, and let the land not lie waste. And Joseph brought the entire land of Mitzrayim for Pharaoh, because every man of the Mitzrites sold his field, because the scarcity of food was severe upon them, and the land came to be Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities, from one end of the borders of Mitzrayim to the other end. Only the ground of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had from what Pharaoh gave them by law, and they ate that which Pharaoh gave them by law. Therefore they did not sell their ground. And Joseph said to the people, "Look, I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh. Look, here is your seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall be that in the harvest you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh, and 4/5 is your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your households, and as food for your little ones." And they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the eyes of my master, and we shall become Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over the land of Mitzrayim to this day, that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the ground of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. And Yisrael dwelt in the land of Mitzrayim, in the land of Goshen, and they had possessions there, and were fruitful and increased exceedingly.
All right, thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. Let me get the stand here. Okay, that's a little better. All right, thank you all you readers. Excellent job, everyone. Fantastic. Okay, the closing blessing. Baruch atah Yahweh Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam natah b'tochenu Baruch atah Yahweh noten haTorah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh your Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. Amen. Amen. All right. So let's just take a minute, because I'm sure we have a lot more people online now than we had when we started. And so we'll just go over the announcements part real quickly here, just to remind everyone. How many we got on there right now? 210. So it's about 80 more people or so from when we were on before. Okay, so I think I made this too high. That's a little better. All right, so just a reminder, so we do this every Tuesday. For those of you that are interested in the Torah study and enjoyed this so far, of course, we haven't done the discussion yet. We're going to do that here in a minute. We also meet every Shabbat here live on YouTube, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. We also have a program for the children called MTOI. It's the Parsha Pearls program. It's for the youth. It's on ymtoi.org. It's all free. You can download all the Torah portions for your children. Of course, we have leader meetings on January 19th, and then on March 10th, that Tuesday night, will be a Purim celebration as well as a Torah study, and then Passover is in April the 8th through the 16th, and we have applications and registration forms on our website. Okay, so that should cover the announcements. So, now we get into the discussion portion. Okay, Steve will come up here and grab a mic, and you have it ready? Okay, good. So if you have a comment or question on live stream, we got a couple of guys watching that. We have Manny and Rob watching the desk there to take down your comments and questions and read them over the mic. And then if you're here, if you raise your hand, Steve Waffle will bring around the microphone. And whose hand was up first? Mr. Craig Lane. Okay. Craig, go ahead and get us started.
Yes, I guess with Joseph and his brothers, how difficult it can be for both parties. Sometimes when Yah is really doing a work, I'm sure that it wasn't easy for his brothers. They really hurt their father, and certainly wasn't easy for Joseph, but I mean, we all know the outcome, and it's just, sometimes it's difficult to be on both ends. I think in life we can find ourselves as his brothers or as him, and it's tough to be in either one of those spots.
Amen. Amen. Appreciate that. Okay, so before we get the next comment, I should have prefaced all of this. Richard had his hand up. I don't know if was there somebody on this side also? Okay. So as we're waiting to get the mic over to Richard, so just a reminder, we'd like to go chronologically, and that was plenty fine. We also would like to do what Craig did, which is look for what you can glean out of it that you can see in your own life. And he recognized that, we too can find ourselves in either role, the role of the brothers or the role of Joseph, and how challenging that could be. So we're looking for those things as we go through the Torah portion so we can understand, where we could see ourselves to learn, as these things are written as examples for us, how we can learn how to then take those lessons and apply them in our lives. We'll see people doing well, we should imitate them. We see people doing not well, we should not imitate them. It's kind of simple. Okay, Richard.
I just have a comment on 45, verse 24. Joseph says, do not quarrel along the way, which kind of goes with the two sides there.
You got to keep that right up by your mouth.
It goes along with the two sides that don't quarrel along the way. I'm wondering if that was, because it doesn't say any more than that, based in the fact that Joseph really knew his brothers.
Well, he did, but also what had happened right before the quarreling, or the comment about quarreling? Steve, Rabbi Tom's got his hand up. Do you want to comment on that, Rabbi Tom? Okay. So what had happened right before he said don't quarrel? He did what? He gave Benjamin a bunch more than he gave everybody else. Just like his father did to him. And he said, okay, you just saw me give way more to Benjamin than you got. So don't you let that, let's behave out there. Okay? So, yeah, don't throw him a ditch, exactly. All right? And so that could have been part of the whole thing. He wanted to make sure that the jealousy issues were not going to rear their ugly head again. Okay. So, Rabbi Tom.
Okay, thank you. One of the lessons I got from this was when Joseph had the meetings, especially the final one with his brothers, you might say he did have a little bit of fun with them. He made them sweat. But through it all, he was never really vindictive. He was never cruel or I'm going to get you type attitude, I'm going to make you suffer. He really was very merciful for all that happened to him. And maybe that's something I learned from it.
Amen. Okay, I've often said to you guys that there's at least 3 voices in your head. Some of you have more. We'll have to talk about that another time. Okay? But for those of you dealing with the main 3 voices, the 3 voices being your self, the I, me voice, Hasatan trying to egg you on to do things maybe that you want to do but you shouldn't do, and then, of course, Yahweh's voice. I think Joseph was dealing with sort of a 3 kind of issue thing in his head. I mean, he, on the one hand, wanted to reconcile with his brothers. And he didn't know how to do that at this point. And that's sort of, let's put that as Yahweh's voice, okay? Of course, Hasatan's voice was like, oh, they burned you, you ought to burn them back. Go on, revenge, make them sweat, make them pay. And of course, the I voice was, I want to know what happened to them. Did they suffer like I suffered? Did they change? Have they grown? That curiosity, I think, was sort of he needed to know. Before he would do A or B, he needed to know really where they were at. So part of his playing with them was also prodding and poking for information. He wanted to know, hey, what would you do? And see, Judah steps up and says, Father, I am guarantor. I will assure you, okay? And so that's where you can start to see the heart of Judah that then goes forth all the way even till today, to stand as guarantor, put his life on the line for representing Israel, okay? So, but I think that's really, kind of what Rabbi Tom was getting to is this idea of having, mixed emotions and mixed thoughts. But I think you could use those 3 examples. I mean, you can imagine that he did want revenge, and Hasatan's sitting there going, come on, they threw you in a ditch, you got arrested, you got all this suffering, they left you for dead, they sold you to slavery. It's time to get even, you're in charge. And I'm sure he had that thought, but he resisted that voice. His own voice wasn't so problematic. He needed to know more. He couldn't just accept them and forgive them. He wanted to know if they changed at all, if they've grown. And he just wanted to see, what was going on. And when he heard Judah tell the story of how he stood in guarantee and how concerned he was for this brother, that gave him a sense that maybe they learned their lesson, And so then he was able to do what Yahweh wanted, which was for him to embrace his brothers. So that's really a good little thing there. Okay, so who's next? Okay, Steve, go ahead.
I just thought I wouldn't go first this time.
Keep moving because it's making Michael's job harder. No, he'll follow you. It's okay. Steve started talking and he was walking. I'm like, the cameraman's trying to follow you.
All right, for 44:18, for me is a prime example of respect. And a couple of comments with that. I think here is when we offer respect, receiving it wouldn't be far behind. And whether or not we're under that person's authority, we should always show respect to somebody in authority.
Amen. Amen. Look, it has nothing to do with today's Torah portion, but it just triggered a thought in my mind. Well, last time that I've ever had an opportunity, the last conference I got to speak at, the guy behind the booth there had this sort of the camera to focus on, and he was trying to do Brad Scott and other people that are very mobile. And then I was like the last of the three guys to speak, and I went up to the guy and said, "Your job's easy. Put the camera on the podium. I don't move." I said, because he was trying to track with Brad. Brad was everywhere, But I said, no issues here. Put the camera, walk away from it. I'm not going anywhere. But anyway, I actually wrote in my notes for all of chapter 44, I wrote a big word. I wrote the word respect, the way they kept referring to your servant and calling him master. See, they came to a place where they started to understand authority. Because remember, really, this was not a jealousy over stuff. Oh, you gave Joseph a pretty coat. No, the coat represented authority, okay? And in the Hebrew, that's what we get to see more than the idea that it had many colors. It didn't have many colors. It was of many lengths, and it had to do with, it was a coat of authority. We see King David, his daughter is wearing such a coat as that, which is a coat of the authority from David, okay? Not necessarily the same coat that Joseph had, but of the same idea, representing the same thing. And so the brothers here are using language to show that they finally were getting the idea of coming under authority and having respect for authority. So good point, Steve, because that is definitely a big message in chapter 44, is the concept of respect. Okay, we have a hand up over here, Sarah Beth. Excuse me.
Question. See if I'm connecting things correctly. You said that the Father doesn't come until after Yeshua's come and cleaned everything up. Would that be like a picture of Joseph goes to Egypt, gets order, becomes governor, he's in charge of everything, then his father comes?
That might be something interesting. I didn't make that connection, so that's a good one. I like that. I made a different connection, actually. I made a whole bunch of connections with the idea of, in chapter 45, verse 5, we refer to the Messiah two ways, Messiah ben Yosef and Messiah ben David. Messiah ben David, obviously simple. That's the king Messiah. But Messiah or Mashiach ben Yosef is the suffering Messiah. But I got something else actually out of chapter 45 and verse 5, which says, "And now do not be grieved nor displeased with yourselves because you sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life." See, when Yeshua came as Messiah ben Yosef, he came to preserve life. So I thought that was another example of Messiah ben Yosef, not just the suffering part as being, put in a ditch and sold into slavery and all this other stuff, but the idea that he said, I was sent here to preserve life. And through the suffering part, Yeshua was killed, resurrected, right? And so that was to provide a possibility of preservation of life. And so there's another one also when it talks about, later on he goes, let's see, there was another verse here. Anyway, he continued on to say something about bringing everybody here so that they can have food. Okay, was that in verse 10? And you shall dwell in the land of Goshen and be near to me, you and your children, children's children, your flocks and your herds and all that you have, and I shall provide for you there. Okay? And he says, all who come to me will not hunger. See, that's another Yeshua connection. See, I'm glad I got that face from you, because I got the same from I gave you back when you said the son coming before the father, getting things all straightened out. Of course, in Joseph's case, he didn't get things all straightened out. He came to a place that was already somewhat straightened out and did some things to preserve life. And then, of course, the family comes and squanders almost everything they have, typical Israel, and ends up selling themselves eventually into slavery. Okay? So that's how we end the story there. But I think that, when people talk about the two messiahs and seeing Joseph, I think they miss a few of the pieces sometimes. Is that Joseph makes it clear. He says, I was sent by Elohim to preserve life and to make provision. Come to me and all your needs will be met. Do not worry as the Gentiles worry over this and that and how I shall feed myself or clothing or this or that. But if you come to me, you seek the kingdom of Elohim first, all these things will be added to you. See, so it's a lot of great little examples there. Okay, who's next? Okay, live stream. While you're getting over there, in chapter 46 and verse 21, if I could have had twins, my twins would have been named Mupim and Chupim. I just saw that and said, that somebody's got to have twins and named them that. Okay. I'm thinking, I bet you they were twins. Mupim and Chupim. Sorry, I couldn't resist when that was read, who read that? Serenity read that. When she read that, I said, that's funny, I got to write that down. What was that? You don't know how she read through all those names? She did great. She did great. So let there be a lesson, all of you that are intimidated when you get to the names and the genealogies, okay? Just make sure she's sitting in front of you and she gets the list, that's all. All right, what we got on the live stream? Nothing. Okay, we're going to end here now. Go ahead. See, it's getting late. I'm already getting ready for Mishpacha Chavarim time. The big party animal that I am. See, they're all laughing. You guys on live stream don't know. They're like, yeah, Rabbi, you'll probably go to your office and do some work while we're all playing in here, which is probably true. Okay, so anyway, go ahead.
All right, comment from Chris and Andy Ollie Dennis says, Andy says, we notice that in these passages that Yah blessed the tribes by providing for them, but it plays out that they enslaved themselves and then needed to be rescued. Sometimes same for us.
Right. Now, bear in mind, it does not tell us clearly that they enslaved themselves. Now, at this first, all we hear is that they sold their land and that they were going to be provided enough seed so that they should be able to have 4/5 for themselves, which should be enough to provide whatever they needed. So there's more to the story that comes after that. We can only assume that they squandered that and got themselves in more trouble. Okay, but we are never told that. This is as much as we're told. But we can certainly see the pattern. Okay, what's next?
All right, from Libby, says comment, Genesis 44, verses 30. It's amazing to see this transformation in the brothers. They were no longer filled with jealousy, knowing their father's love and affection for Benjamin. They had been brought to repentance.
Yeah, and you reap what you sow. I mean, we think of Joseph, we hear his story, how much he suffered. We don't get to hear the story of the brothers, but could you imagine how miserable it would be for them to watch how miserable their father was all this time? I mean, it is 20 plus years of their father just miserable, moaning and missing. I mean, they did not get the victory they had hoped for, which is now Dad's just going to love us and Joseph's out of the way. Oh, no. Oh, no. He probably shunned them and ignored them. Just all he did was weep and moan over his son that was gone and put all his attention that he could on Benjamin. And so I'm sure they suffered, and in suffering you learn, And that's why they were like, we can't do this. Our father will die. Okay, go ahead.
Greg Wallen said, "Moopim, hoopim, and ard." Sounds like winking, blinking, and nod.
Well, Moopim and Hoopim are 2/3 of a nice law firm. I won't mention the name that came to my head for the third one. Okay, go ahead. Fill in the joke yourself.
Okay, from J.S. James, is 7 years of plenty, the 2 years famine, when the regathering of the brothers after they repented, and them being protected from the famine by the son who was doing the work of Pharaoh, a shadow of revelation.
I'm not sure what to do with that. I mean, I agree with most of what you said. I'm not so sure how it's a shadow of revelation. There are things that are going on that would be, again, you're trying to sideways me into eschatology, aren't you? Not going to happen. Okay, so, look, this is all shadow pictures of things that do happen to play out in the end times. We see it play out in a loop over history. As a matter of fact, this is already a loop that we see played out prior to Joseph, with his grandfather and his father, etc., going, his great-grandfather and his grandfather kind of playing his way down. So we see this playing out in a loop, and it goes forward that way. And ultimately, we're going to end up in another process where we'll probably all be starving to death and having all the other sufferings of Revelation, and a false Messiah is going to come and provide us with everything, make us feel like we're all doing great, and we're going to be in more trouble than we were before, which is ultimately what happened to them in Egypt. So I guess, to some degree, that would play out. Okay.
All right, comment from Olivier and Janet Hoffman. It says, Rabbi, chapter 45, 5-7, Joseph seemed to have emunah to know that Elohim sent him before his brothers to preserve them as a remnant.
Yes, but and I did have this verse marked down additionally to the, the Messiah ben Yosef, is that this is the idea of emunah. Okay, Yosef had to know and trust that there was a purpose to what was going on, that it would serve Yah's purposes in some way. And then he comes to recognize after the events are over and played through, don't grieve. What you had intended to, hurt me and be evil, Yah already knew and had sent me here in advance, knowing that he knew that the scarcity was coming. He knew the drought was coming, the famine was coming. So he sent me here to preserve you. See, that's part of the lesson for us to understand, that whatever you're going through, he already knew you would go through it. That's why he says that he allows you to go through it with a way of escape that will be provided as needed in a form that he chooses that will help you grow. Okay? All right. Rabbi Tom, okay, bring it over there. It's no problem.
Okay, thank you again. I noticed in the latter part of 47, it seems that Joseph was rather mercenary when he took their silver and then their cattle and their land and everything. And but then in verse 25, the people said, "You've saved our lives." So they were at first grateful. But I don't know what you think of this, but I wonder if later maybe they had some reservations. Maybe they changed their mind and they became resentful because he only, it says he only took these things from the Mitzrites and not from the Israelites. And the Israelites seem to have been spared, and that may have caused some resentment, do you think?
Well, I mean, look, the there was at this point, everybody was considered being part of the land, part of the nation of Mitzrayim, and I'm guessing, because we see this play out, that the beginning of slavery was they sold their land, so they became basically, peasants on the land serving the ownership of the king. Okay, like serfs. This is the beginning of the serf-like although they were given 4/5, which is not what normally a serf would get, but then as would happen, the taxes would go up. Joseph was no longer going to be there, okay? And once Joseph was no longer there, then, we see, and then rose a Pharaoh did not remember Joseph. We're getting closer and closer to the beginning of Exodus chapter 1, right? And so you can see how they could find themselves enslaved, okay?
Question how I see that for me would be, going back to the emunah, Yah allows us to go through, and sometimes causes us to us to go through intense moments of pain if we don't kick and scream against them, but embrace the emunah. It always leads to something amazing. We grow, it's amazing, whatever. The end is good. Both with Joseph and the pain that he went through with his brothers, but it was even the slavery. Yah knew they were going to go there, and he used it to bring something great out of it.
And look, there's a lot of stuff going on here with the emotional things. Look, I think it's almost interesting and somewhat humorous that, at the beginning of chapter 45, he sends everybody out, but then it says later that everybody in the house heard it. This has more to do with a culture, and you see this goes a lot more towards the East than towards the Western culture, of saving face. And so even if you were to be heard, as long as nobody got to see it and witness it, it was saving some face. So it wasn't just about, he got everybody out of there, but then what was the point if everybody could hear him? Because he didn't do it in front of them. Okay? And so it wasn't that it was secretive that he was going to weep and embrace his brothers. They all knew this was his brothers and this was ultimately going to happen in some way or whatever. They were not surprised by this. He never hid the fact that this was his brothers, and he said to Pharaoh and introduced them and everything else. But before he broke down in this important role of leadership, he sent everyone out because that was the protocol, that if he was going to lose his cool, so to speak, and lose his calm, that he would not do that in front of those that were servants to him. Okay? Now, they could hear him, but see, that's something that they would also have a protocol to pretend that they never heard. Okay? It's one thing to say that you didn't hear, it's another thing to say that you didn't see when you were standing in the room. Okay? And so this was all part of the social game of respect in public that was played and has been played for centuries and centuries and centuries, especially as you go further east. Okay, you see this quite a bit. And remember, this is taking place in the Middle East as you're headed further and further east. So a lot of that cultural idea, remember, honor and shame, part of the honor and shame society, it was dishonoring for him to do that in front of the servants. So he sent them all out. Remember, he ate separately because as far as the servants were concerned, he was Egyptian. These were Canaanites. So he didn't eat with them. He ate separately. But now at this point, he wanted to do something that he couldn't do in front of them. So that's an interesting part about it. Okay, what else you got?
Okay, from MTOI Lakeview, any significance in 46:4 and Elohim telling Yaakov going down and letting Yosef put his hands on his eyes. And then Libby's also is chapter 46, verse 3-4. Is this an example of something about to be revealed from a place of darkness?
There could be some of that. The idea of letting Yosef put his hand on his eyes, where, of course, with these metaphorical type things, we're guessing. Easy for me to say as I'm about to cough. It could be the idea of him saying, let him have your vision. The vision that I've given to Abraham, that I gave to Isaac, and now gave to Jacob, now you're giving that vision to Joseph. Let him put his hands on your eyes. Let him receive the vision. Okay? I mean, there's a lot of, well, this is all guessing. All right? We don't have verses to tell us what that means. Okay, what's next?
All right. From Adam, it says 46:34. Why were the shepherds an abomination to the Mitzrites?
It had to do with their worship of certain animals, I'm going to say. That would be my guess, okay? Which is another thing you find quite, prevalent in the East. The idea of sacred animals. There was a sacred bull that was an Egyptian god that they worshipped. There was things that were done from the... That's why making the golden bull or the golden calf was very much an Egyptian thought. Okay? And again, I'm going to tell you up front, these are guesses, right? Because it does not say.
From Alyssa Holmes, says, I have a question. Could he have given Benjamin more than everyone else to watch and observe to see how they would react if one was favored above the rest?
Say it one more time. I want to make sure I understood.
Alyssa Holmes, she said, I have a question. Could he have given Benjamin more than everyone else to watch and observe to see how they would react if one was favored above the rest?
No, I don't think he necessarily did that. I mean, I think he was doing that as a part of it. I think he gave Benjamin more because he wanted to give Benjamin more. This was his brother, the only one left of his mother. There was a certain closeness, and he had not gotten to grow up with him. He'd missed his whole growing up because he didn't get to see any of that because he had been taken from that. So, I think he wanted to bless and spoil his brother, but I think at the same time, that's why he said don't quarrel. He wanted to see what they would do. But I don't think he did it to see what they would do. I think he did it the same reason why his father gave him the code of the lengths. He wanted to bless his son. And so he wanted to bless Benjamin. Look, he made all the effort just to have them bring Benjamin. He wanted to see Benjamin. He didn't care. He didn't care to test his brothers. He knew they weren't lying. He knew that the father and how many brothers they had and everything else. I mean, he knew they were telling the truth about all the stuff. He wanted to see his brother. This is his little brother. He was a special, child to him, and he hadn't seen him since he was little. And so this is a big deal. Okay? And then you see at the end, they both, weep on and gave each other kisses and weeps and hugs and just, they're reunited. Okay, next.
From Maureen Williams, says, can you please explain why in the Brit Hadashah portion in Acts 7:14 said that there were 75 persons and the Torah portion said there were 70?
And if you go to the beginning of Exodus, it says there were 72. So, okay, so, actually it says 70 in verse 5 of Exodus 1. Well, you know that there were two that didn't make it through that they mentioned specifically of Judah, right? Two of his. So there are ones that are not exactly in the count. There's those that, if you count the literal births and genealogies and how many actually went into Egypt. And so you can get different numbers. There's a couple of places where you find that the numbers don't match up exactly. And I think he does that on purpose to give you, just make a point. The same point happens in other places. And usually with the idea of 70, it's not exactly always 70. Why? We're guessing again. All right? But there is something, at least to the idea that there are those that didn't actually make it into Egypt. And so you lose a few. All right? You also are not counting, the two that Joseph had in Egypt. Okay, so now that gives you 4 of the 5, possibly from 70 to 75. Because Joseph has 2, and they're not coming to Egypt. They're already there. They're his kids. Okay? And so that's where you can get the numbers to be different. All right?
Would Joseph's wife be added to that number as well?
Could be. Could be.
All the rest I have are, the last 3 are all on 47. I didn't know if we wanted to jump to 40. Okay, from Anita Coleman, question on 47:7. Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set them before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Is this possibly indicative of the Melchizedek priesthood?
No, I mean, look, you got to understand that there's blessing. I think we did this in the Master Teach Us to Pray. I think we might have done it in the, I don't remember which teaching we did. It was either that one or we might have done this in the What is Worship, okay? But blessing is one way when it comes from above, and blessing is a different way when it comes from below. Like we say, blessed are you, Yahweh, when we pray. But he can also bestow blessings upon us. And so this is Joseph's father, excited and blessed that Pharaoh would embrace him and his family the way he did, and wanted to bless him in some way. Okay? So not necessarily from a Melchizedekian priesthood type of thing, although certainly he would have been looked at, I would guess, as a Melchizedekian priest, Yaakov for sure. But I don't know that that was what that was. This is simply, here's leadership and authority who is in his benevolence. Okay, Pharaoh was definitely being benevolent, said and honored Joseph and said, you could bring all of your family here and I will give them honored positions. I will treat them like royalty. I'll let them have the best lands for their flocks, even though we don't like shepherds. Okay, I'm just saying, you know. And so Jacob said, and remember, now Jacob is, I'm sure, older than Pharaoh and wanted to bless and say, bless you for taking, you know, such good care of us and being willing to provide for my sons and my family.
From J. Frederick Miles, he's asking about the shepherd saints. He said, could the shepherds being an abomination to the Mitzrites have anything to do with Abraham having been down there and lied about his wife, and she's taken by Pharaoh, and y'all sent plagues on Pharaoh?
Okay, so that's Frederick, our Frederick, by the way, so you know who that is. Frederick, ask that question again for Frederick. Read it to me again for Frederick.
It says, could the shepherds be an abomination to the Mitzrites have anything to do with Abraham having been down there and lied about his wife?
Okay, I get the question. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, it's certainly, I guess, possible that a couple of the kings, you know, the Avimelechs, the Abimelechs, were deceived by a shepherd, a Canaanite shepherd, you know, Abraham and Isaac and things like that, but it said the Mitzrites in general, and the Mitzrites in general would not have known what Abraham did or Isaac did. That was something that was between him and the leadership. So I think it has to do with something more. But again, remember I said we're guessing. So Frederick, you know, your point may be a part of that puzzle. I don't know.
From Philip Mason, says question 47:14 through 27. Could this be a lesson to us to prepare for the cyclical famines in life so that we won't have to sell ourselves to Pharaoh? Notice a correlation with our modern society.
Yeah, no, I think that all of the story about from the Pharaoh getting the dreams until Joseph saying to, you know, during the years of plenty to put aside a fifth and all these things is all about that. It's all about being prepared, understanding that these things definitely are cyclical, and being prepared for them. Look, it's the same thing like we said earlier during the prayer time. You know, there's no surprise in the parts of Australia where there are fires that there have been fires before. Okay, maybe they're spreading more into areas that it didn't get as much, but there's definitely in New South Wales and other places like that, there are in these big wooded areas tendencies in the heat when it gets really dry in the summer, which it is there now, to have fires. Sometimes they're under control and not so bad. Sometimes they're worse. Same thing with Northern California. And you saw it a couple of years ago, we were visiting in Canada, and there was all across Western Canada and in British Columbia. I mean, but this is cyclical stuff. And you have to be prepared that these things are likely to happen at some point. Look, my wife and I, we lived in Florida for a while. We saw years and years where there were no hurricanes that were of any sort, and other years where there's 2 or 3 in a row, hitting, or a couple of years in a row, get bang, bang, bang. It goes and flows in cycles, okay? And we remember seeing that. I mean, there was the ones that, they hit Florida, then the ones that hit New Orleans, and the levees broke and all this, and then for a couple of years, not much happened. Then a couple more years, it got very active. It goes in different cycles, okay? We'll go many years and not hear about a volcano erupting, and all of a sudden we'll hear about 3. Then it's quiet again, then it happens again. What are we being told? Be prepared. Plan for those. We used to talk about being, put something away for a rainy day. Well, you should be prepared for things. You should be prepared in case you lose your job. You should be prepared in case the economy goes south. You should be prepared. People talk about prepping in case, terrible things happen. Well, you know what? It doesn't take the end times for it to be bad enough that there won't be food on the shelves. I'm telling you, when I lived in Florida, the hurricane came and wiped everything out. There wasn't a whole lot of food on the shelves. Okay, and you don't have power and your food and refrigerator doesn't work. Well, if you don't have some food put aside, you could be in trouble. And that may only be a week, but it doesn't take long for a week to be a problem. Okay, so you can have need for a week or two for stuff, and so be very wise to have some stuff. I'm not talking like end times prepping in case you're going to be years without whatever, but just to be ready for a little bit of time. And by the way, if you're going to do that, here's a bit of advice. The way you do it is you put it aside, and then you keep buying more and keep eating what you put aside so that it keeps being recycled. You keep cycling through it. Don't just say, well, it's got a 15-year shelf life. Well, you don't need to hold it for 15 years. Buy it. As you use it, keep buying more, or buy more and keep using it, buy more and keep using it. And that way you're using it and cycling through it. Okay? And also that way you'll know which one was good. How are you going to know till you try it? So use some of it and get a sense of it. Okay? But yeah, bad things happen in life, natural disasters, and they can cause you to be without for a short period of time. Watch people in this town freak out because they heard a rumor that there's a possibility that it might maybe sort of snow. They'll go into a full-on panic and schools will be closed. When I went to school in New York, even a blizzard didn't close the schools. Nothing closed the schools. I would wake up, watch the news. Well, we got 18 inches last night. By the way, city schools are open. I'm like, what? I can't even open the front door. Schools are open. Oh, but in this town, somebody heard a whisper of a possibility that it might snow in the afternoon, so everybody in the office is like, we need to close early. Okay, why? Well, I heard maybe possibly it might snow. There's no bread in the stores anymore. The water's all gone. The milk is all bought up. But this is Tennessee. How bad can it get? I'll tell you what is bad. Don't drive when it's like that because the people out here have no idea how to drive on anything. Okay? They have no idea what to do. Excuse me. All right, what's next?
From Olivier and Janet Hoffman.
Okay, wait. Now, I let you ask 3 or 4 questions when you were here. No, okay, you can still get another one.
Okay, back to the 47:7-10. When Israel blesses Pharaoh, was this done more as a way of gratitude for how he treated Joseph?
Yes.
Can you help us understand more about this blessing, please?
I already answered that. So same answer I gave before.
From Anita Coleman, observation on 47:26. When the people wanted to buy from Pharaoh, he demanded 1/5, which is twice 1/10 of the tithe. We are much better off with Yah as our king than a man as our king.
All right, now that's man, this is getting to be a problem. All right. I had that thought, but I don't think that's the point. Okay? Why did he want 1/5? What did he want during the years of plenty? 1/5. So his thought is these people are going to blow the 4/5 they've got. So let me collect 1/5 so that I can give them that when they need it. Right? By the way, isn't that the same thing with the tithing system? That if you're giving the tithes, not only are you supporting the work and the ministry and all the other things, but then there's something there if you need it. Because you might need the benevolence at some point. There needs to be something in the storehouse that you're going to have a need. So I think the 1/5 matches up much more with, instead of comparing it to the 1/10 of Yah, which I think is a legitimate thing. I had that thought, and I was going to write it down. I was thinking, but it seems to match up much more with he put aside 1/5 when they had, so that they would have for when they didn't have. And so I think he's doing the same thing here. Well, they already blew enough to sell me their land. What's the odds of them blowing it again? Pretty good. So since that was predictable, why don't we collect the fifth so we have something to feed them with? All right, go ahead.
Just maybe a comment on that or a question. I think didn't mention also that 1/5 set aside because if they ate everything, once they go back after the 7 years of famine, they wouldn't have nothing to plant to regrow everything back. So it was to hold back for regrowth.
For all of that, okay? It was to prepare for the inevitable, which is at some point you're not going to have. Anything else?
That's all I have.
All right. Well, that's going to conclude our study as I cough my brains out. I do apologize. I know that's harsh, especially coming over the live stream. I'm sure I got to try to mute every time I cough. It's not easy to do. Let's go ahead and have somebody close us in prayer. Okay, why don't you bring it over to Rick? He got his hand up, and he's conveniently located to where you're standing. Okay, so Rick's going to go ahead and close us in prayer, and then those of you who want to be on camera can come up here, and we can wave to everybody out there. Rick, go ahead and close us.
Nice job giving us part 4 of Millennium in the Kingdom there.
Yeah, well, that was not quite it, but okay.
Abba, Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for your Torah and for giving us an anointed appointed who can point out things that we wouldn't normally see in your word to help us learn how to apply it to our lives today and how to walk it out to be pleasing in your sight. We thank you for this time together, and we ask all this in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Okay. I actually noticed something else on my paper here that I didn't mention. I think it's worth mentioning just for, well, I don't know if I want to stir this up, but all right. Okay, in the genealogies, you'll notice that the only woman that's mentioned, only daughter mentioned is Dinah. Okay, let that just be a point to all of you out there, especially all you liberated and emancipated women who feel like you're all equal and everything else. And I'm not a chauvinist, I'm not trying to put anybody down, but recognize that in your scriptures, the women were not talked about and held in the same authoritative place. Not that they weren't equal and valued in everything else. Dinah is only mentioned because her story's in the book. Okay, she's a part of the events that happened. There were other daughters, I'm sure. I'm sure that not everybody, all of the sons of Jacob didn't just only have sons. Okay, I mean, it's just, all of his wives didn't just only have sons. The sons are what was important. Okay, the sons are what was important. I mean, in all of the genealogies, we're only hearing about the boys. You go to any genealogy all the way to the beginning of Genesis, right? You only hear about the men. And they had sons and daughters, sometimes it gets mentioned. Just realize that, ladies, that's not an insult to you. Don't take it the wrong way, but recognize that it's because it was to the men, and then the men were responsible to give it to the women and the children, as it always plays through. Okay? So I know, and again, somebody's going to say, well, what about the 70? I'm not saying that there were more than what we're getting here. I'm just saying is that notice that Dinah's the only one that's mentioned. There's only one daughter there. You don't go to the other genealogies and see daughters mentioned. It's to be understood that in the society that these things were happening in, women really had no rights, no anything except for the marriage rights. It said you needed to provide for them and take care of them and those kind of things. They were not less than. And we should never think of them as less than. But ladies, you should never think of yourself as more than or greater than either. Okay? And that's what we have to deal with, those inherent conflicts between men and women. So that was the part I didn't want to stir it up too much, but just, realize that it's always talking about the sons because they had the responsible authority. They were responsible for everything that would happen. They were responsible for everybody's life, for all their provision. Okay, that duty and that burden was on the men. All right? Okay? Of course, ladies, without you, there aren't any children. There aren't any, none of this stuff works with just one or the other by itself. Right? Adam was clear that he was not right for him to be alone. Okay? So God provided him one to match with him. But they had to have a specific relationship. Okay? Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. All right? Because you can see that in chapter 46. All right, that being said, and I'm sure everybody in the chat box is going, no, I'm kidding. No, they're not. They're being quiet. Okay, Come on up, let's wave goodbye. After all, there's so many of you today. Let's get you all up here. All right, Michael's up on the camera, so if he tells you need to move to be on the camera here, he'll tell you to move left or right. We're good? All right. So you guys made it easy for Michael today. Okay, so what we're going to do is on 3, we're going to wish everybody a Laila Tov, good night, Shavua Tov, good week, and Shana Tova, okay, a good year. All right? Why not? Here we go. Laila Tov, Shavua Tov, and Shana Tova. On 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Laila Tov, Shavua Tov, Shana Tova. I love you guys.